Welcome to the book in 75 minutes if you just open to chapter 1. In August 2012, I attended a small one-day conference. No, I won't quite be doing that. How's the sound out there? Okay, it's 8:31, so let's go ahead and begin. So welcome to BriForum. Thanks for coming to my session this morning. As you know, I'm Jack Madden. I guess I have a picture up there, but you can also see the real version of me right there. You can see from that picture that I spend a lot of time dealing with mobile devices. I live in San Francisco. I am a TechTarget employee, so writing just for Brian Madden, just for TechTarget. I'm not employed by any vendor or anything like that at all. Like I said, I write at brianmadden.com, where we cover, in addition to desktop virtualization and consumerization, we have that whole enterprise mobility management category that we've been cultivating. So that's been fun. I was a contributor to this book, The VDI Delusion, and Brian just told you about the new version, so that's really exciting. But the reason why we're here today is this book. So this is the brand new book, Enterprise Mobility Management. Everything you need to know about MDM, MAM, and BYOD. So that's why you're here today. So thanks so much for coming. And so I have 8 copies of this book up here, and I tweeted that I'd be giving them away. I haven't really decided exactly how to give these copies of the book away, but I'm thinking anybody who asks a question gets a book. Does that sound fair to anybody? And if the question is, can I have a book? I guess that works. So feel free to ask a question, and then you can get a book. So this book is 176 pages, but today we'll be doing it in 75 minutes or 71.5 minutes. But the first thing I want to talk about is, so before we even get to the book, so why are we having this conversation about enterprise mobility management? Now, this is my 4th time presenting at BriForum, and every session that I've given in the past 3 BriForums at which I've presented has been a basic variation on the whole overall story of how all of this new enterprise mobility management stuff works. And so this MDM, this MAM and stuff, we've been talking about this for, modern MDM came around in 2010, and we've been talking about this for a while. So sort of, I think in the keynote, Brian should have given some good reasons for why this dealing with iPhones and iPads and Android devices is important to us. And so I'm glad that you guys are on board, or at least wanting to know more about how we deal with these things and are here. Another thing before I begin. We're in an interesting period of time right now because we know about this. We know about iOS 7, and we know that it's been announced, but it's still in a developer beta. So I don't know, how many of you have iOS developer accounts and have been playing around with iOS 7? A few of you, not too many. Well, I have to say, not me either, because I write about this stuff, and iOS 7 is, it's under non-disclosure agreement, and while there are many bloggers that have been posting lots of screenshots about how all the new iOS 7 stuff works, that's not a line that I want to cross. So without a doubt, iOS 7 is going to be changing this enterprise mobility management conversation significantly. And we have learned we've learned some very big things about how this next version is going to change what we do and how we approach enterprise mobility management. Unfortunately, it's just the few basic hints, and we're still in this limbo mode. And that, it's unfortunate, but we just have to deal with it. So this introduction of this book, well, we already talked about why are we here. So when I talk about enterprise mobility management, since we're we're all here in this room. We all agree on a few things. But I want to sort of set some sort of ground rules, I guess, for this discussion, things that sort of aren't for debate, and they're taken as givens for the purpose of this session. So these are the 7 truths of EMM. And actually, if this presentation follows pretty closely what's in the book, which that was, basically just to make it easy for me. If I forget what to say, I can just open up the book and, do a nice reading. So things that we're taking as givens and not debating. Number 1, we're done trying to decide whether iPads or iPhones are from them. I mean, if your opinion is that you don't like to do work from an iPad, and hey, I build so much of my stuff, on my laptop, and my iPad for me is occasionally checking email and watching Netflix. But whatever your opinion about modern mobility is, there are users out there that have other opinions. They may feel like all cool like this, and we may think when they come up to us and say, "Can I get my email on here?" We may be thinking, "Oh, geez." But the fact is that they're out there. For many people, they are legitimate tools, so we have to deal with that. Number 2, thanks to this whole consumerization of IT that we've been talking about, we have to deal with this user craziness no matter what. So the fact that the users want to bring in their mobile devices, we can't just forbid it or anything. Because how many of you guys have heard Brian's concept of FUIT? The concept of FUIT is a Latin word that means for he or she was, as in IT was in control of what their users could do. Now they are not anymore, because people can just get around the controls and bring in their own tablets. And if you can't remember the Latin term FUIT, because it is a foreign term, and I wasn't too great at foreign languages in class, just remember to spell it out, F-U-I-T. We have a whole series of articles with evidence, anecdotes about how people have been able to get around when somebody says no. Given fact number 3, we're past the hard part right now. And what I mean by this, I'm going to explain this more a little bit later. But when consumerization happened, we had this difficult inversion to deal with when suddenly the user's personal technology that they brought in got way better than some of the technology that IT could provide them on their own. Now, unless you have a super huge budget, I don't think you're going to be handing all of your users an iPad and a Kindle and a smartphone and a MacBook Air. So this inversion of the consumer technology surpassing, that's a one-time event, I think, and we know that it has happened. We know that we have to deal with the effects of consumerization, so it's a given now. We can put it past us, and that disruption is gone. Number 4, it doesn't take BYOD to get modern mobility. And actually, my last 3 points are basically all mean the same thing, that everything that we talk about today basically is 100% even for personal devices and for corporate-owned devices. I don't care who owns it. An iPad is an iPad no matter what, or somebody's going to want to use an iPhone exactly the same no matter who owns it. And now that companies, when the iPhone came out, it may have been a personal device that people brought in, but how many companies these days are buying their users iPhones instead of BlackBerries? Again, BYOD and consumerization are unrelated. You can have somebody bring in their personal devices and then have it get locked down, and then it's the most consumerization unfriendly thing you've ever experienced. Just again, BYOD, it's a purchasing thing that's completely different from consumerization, and mobility. Having said that, BYOD is something that we still always have to deal with. We can have formal programs or we can completely forbid BYOD, but it's still going to happen. Look at me. So when I'm at home, this is my apartment. I'm at home in the weekend. Here I have, the iPad, the MacBook Air, and at the other end I have the big, thick, gray Dell laptop. Which one of these devices do you think I'm grabbing to check my work email? I don't care if one of these is forbidden. It's right there. And Monday morning when I go into the office, how are they going to prevent me from bringing in my iPad? Maybe. But otherwise, BYOD is something that we have to deal with. And again, like I said, these last few points all having to do with BYOD. I say BYOD doesn't matter because in a technical sense, figuring out how to accommodate, how to support an iPhone or how to support Android, it doesn't matter who owns it. It's still the same iPhone. The users are going to have the same expectations no matter what. So again, it's the same device no matter what. So since BYOD isn't important, we have things that we have to deal with instead. Can we support iOS? Can we support Android? Can we have some of our work data and apps live on the same device as everybody's personal applications? Or how can we safely provide access to data and applications? And they'll see that BYOD is a thing that matters much less. So moving on to sort of how our present mobile landscape can be viewed. We all really lived through this, so we can go through this quickly. It's in the book because for the sake of completeness. But we all know the story when BlackBerry devices were king, and they were awesome. And if I had a personal phone, how many people had? This is a Motorola Razr, the most popular flip phone ever. How many people had one? I mean, those were awesome, but I wasn't doing nearly as much on that as I was doing on the BlackBerry. And then, of course, June 2007 happened, and all of the users began to get really empowered about technology, and the iPhone and the Android, they were getting super popular. But for IT, this was a problem because these things, when they came out, they were absolutely 100% completely unmanageable. There's nothing you can do with this. It was a glorified iPod, and that was unfortunate. But then things did progress. In 2010. We had the advent of basically modern mobile device management. For all intents and purposes, in 2010, you could make those new devices into something like a BlackBerry. And I think Apple has been. I'm not an Apple fanboy or anything, but if you look, they've been doing a very good job steadily through the years. Responding and building up the security features in iOS 7. iOS 4 was a big jump. iOS 7 is another big jump. So people say they're not enterprise friendly, but I don't buy that. Now, of course, Android is a much more different situation, as I'll explain presently. So, understanding iOS and Android, we have to know that so many people have told me that the exciting things about Android and iOS is that it's not 20-year-old Windows. And some people in the mobile space tend to bash Windows a little bit because oh, you have to deal with registries and DLLs and stuff breaks, and you install one app and it breaks another app, and then well, we did have 20 years to fix that up. And these operating systems, these are like 5 and 6 and 7 years old. And so the reality, each one is a product of its own time, and these have the advantage of being only 6 years old instead of 2 decades old. But what that means is we have apps that fundamentally can't go and mess with each other. The OS is fairly stateless. Everything stays in the user space. There's so many security features that are built in instead of bolted on, years later. There are many more, obviously, restrictions about how apps are distributed and installed. And when those apps are installed and removed, they're very clean and very easy to install and remove. Just push a button and clean, nothing left behind, nothing conflicting with each other. So it's great. So like I said, the limited means of app distribution. So for iOS, these limited means, you have the Apple App Store with its, you can argue about, are they going to spot all of the malware? But we know that for all intents and purposes, if your user is just looking around the Apple App Store, they're not going to mess up things too bad, depending on how you look at it. Then other ways of distributing these iOS apps, we have, if you're a developer, you can put apps that you're working on your phones. And if you're an enterprise company that's building your own in-house applications, you can distribute those to your users. You can install them on their devices wirelessly over the air. There's also, Apple has a volume purchase program. It's not quite real software licensing yet. It's going to get better, supposedly, with iOS 7. Again, I don't know all of the details because they're not all public yet. And there's also this business-to-business app distribution program for distributing custom iOS apps to enterprises. This is getting a little bit ahead of the conversation for right now. Now, Android, we have this Google Play Store for Android that we think of the analog of the Apple App Store, but the feeling is that it's kind of easier to get in, and then there are all of these alternative markets. You just click the button, and then in Android, and then you can install the application from. Really, you can install an application from just about wherever you want. So it makes it easier from the enterprise perspective when we're distributing applications to our users, but it also makes them more susceptible to, installing whatever applications they want. So we have a mobile operating system. That was completely unmanageable to begin with, and then in 2010. We have this mobile device management stuff. So what is MDM? Because especially in 2011 and 2012, everybody was saying MDM. It was the hot buzzword. What does it do? Think about it. It's simply policies. For the iPhone, for the iPad, for Android. And these things are, password policies, setting up the VPNs, remote locking and remote wiping a device, encrypting the device, or distributing applications, or setting up email accounts, or calendar accounts. So I'd like to explain it, another way. We have our users' devices. We have these manageable devices. They're out there in the world. I use this guy because they're out there. They're not in one physical location. So on these devices, we can configure settings. We can query the state of the device. We can see settings that have been configured previously, or we can find out about the state of the device, what's going on, maybe where it is, identifiable information about the device. And then we can take specific management actions. We can maybe install an application, or we can wipe it, or we can change those settings. So that's component one of mobile device management. Component number two of mobile device management, since those devices are out there in the world, you need some sort of over-the-air remote protocol. Like a lot of those things, all of these things, you could do these for devices for a long time. Although it would have meant probably walking around with a USB, with a USB cable, or just saying, hey, can I look at your device? And that's, that is mobile device management, but it's not the version that most people think of. So this over-the-air management protocol is a key portion. And then on the other end, of course, we need some policies to combine those settings that we can configure, those queries that we can ask the device, and those actions that we can take. We need some sort of policy to take those actions and do something with them, in certain situations. So this is where we have, this could be, this is our, cloud MDM service. And then only when all three of those parts come together, the manageable device, the protocol, and the policies to decide what to do on the device come together, then you have mobile device management. So the first example that we can give of mobile device management is, of course, Exchange ActiveSync, because you have for years devices with Exchange clients that you could set policies. You have the over-the-air protocol, and you have Exchange, that you could use to manage those devices. So that's all three components of MDM, right? And the problem is, of course, it could cover the basics of password and encryption and remote wiping. And when you look at the Exchange ActiveSync features, you see stuff about blacklisting applications and controlling all sorts of crazy features. You're like, hey, that sounds pretty awesome. Unfortunately, that's all the old Windows Mobile 6.5 stuff that all got gutted with Windows Phone 7. So unfortunately, these days, there's a lot that we can do with other protocols that we can't do with Exchange ActiveSync. And the other problem is that sometimes we can be managing the entire device, or we can be managing just a standalone Exchange email client. And if you think like, okay, Exchange ActiveSync, we're going to secure all of the devices, that's not right. You need to be thinking, Exchange ActiveSync, we're managing all of the mail clients, whether that mail client is a device or whether it's just an app. You do have your client access rules to determine that. But otherwise, that's EAS. You're somewhat limited. Now, the big exciting stuff, like in 2010, I talk about the how modern MDM came along in 2010. Now that was largely in part. So this is due to in iOS, configuration profiles. Now, configuration profiles existed before 2010 in iOS, but you could not manage them over the air. So when you could manage them over the air in 2010, that was the big deal. So these profiles, they're the underlying part of all iOS management, and something that's the capabilities of these is something that we should all really get familiar with. These are all the settings for passwords. It can set up to remote wipe the device. This can be used to install corporate managed applications on an iOS device. And the important part is that these configuration profiles contain the credentials that connect that manageable device over the air to that policy management server, that third component of mobile device management. Now, the one thing missing from configuration profiles, and well, missing isn't the best word, because if you're a user, this is probably for a good thing, but iOS configuration profiles cannot be used to manage user-installed apps. Now, we could lock down the whole device and prevent user-installed apps from being installed completely, but if there are user-installed apps on there, there's nothing that you can do about them. And of course, we know that user-installed apps are the big pain in the rear that causes so much problem, in the desktop space, in the mobile space, everywhere. So this not being able to manage user-installed apps, this is going to be important. So remember this about when we're dealing with iOS devices. Now, I said, the configuration profiles in iOS are an important thing to get to know. This is the iPhone configuration utility available for OS X or Windows, free download. Get this, start playing with it with your own device. This shows you all the basic things that you can do with a profile, and more importantly, these profiles, every single MDM vendor, they all have access to the same, configuration settings, to the same profiles on the device. So you're comparing, one vendor to another. Know that they're all, when it comes to an iOS device, they're all using these, these very same features. Now, again and again in this conversation, whenever we talk about anything that's iOS related, we have to keep in mind to sort of pause the discussion until maybe September. It's really fun that we don't know the date ahead of time, isn't it? We have to pause the discussion and know that there are big changes coming in September. And incidentally, it's kind of unfortunate that printed material is difficult to update after it's printed, unless everybody sends the copy of the book back to me and I can cross out what changes. And but there's the Kindle version of this book, and so I published this on Amazon Kindle. It's great. If you ever felt like writing something, it's so easy to use and so great for getting your stuff out there. But the great thing about the Kindle version is that it will be updated with all of the iOS 7 changes once it comes out and once I do the updated version of the book. So if you're looking at the Kindle version, you don't have to wait until after iOS 7. You can buy it now, and then if the file is downloaded on your device, there will be a new version. And you can just refresh it, and it'll be the new, completely updated version. OK, and a book plug. So we have that nice, very neatly organized world of iOS, and then we have to compare that to the very different world of Android. And people, they talk about how Android is more difficult to manage, it's more insecure, people have religious battles about iOS versus Android. But the important thing to know about Android is that, well, most Android devices, they can all run the same applications, and they're the same basic operating system. Android itself is, for most phone manufacturers, it's just a starting point. Android was created to be an easily adaptable operating system that manufacturers could easily change to suit their needs, however they want. So as a result, the Google Nexus devices are the only ones that you can get that have the pure, unadulterated versions of the pure core Android open source project. And so all of those other devices that you get, Samsung, HTC, Motorola, they all have all of their completely different customizations. And for users, that may seem like, hey, my Samsung, it follows my eyes, while my Nexus doesn't. For users, they can, good for them if they like eye tracking. The problem is that in this Android open source project, the original intention was that since the manufacturers are doing all of the customizations, that's OK, why don't they add the mobile device management APIs, whatever you need to manage the device, in when they do all of their customizations. Now, of course, some manufacturers did a real good job of adding management customizations, and some didn't, and that's what we had to deal with. And so eventually, starting in Android 2.2 and moving on, the core Android does have management APIs in it. It's called the Device Administration API. You can go and look at this at developer.android.com for more details. But it's very basic features. You see, like, this list of very basic things is much shorter than the giant list of management APIs that you can have in iOS. And so, of course, like I said, what the result is that we get manufacturers adding in their own management APIs, which that's great. That would be great, like, if all of our users only used Samsung phones, and we didn't have to worry about versions with other management APIs. But now we live in this world where managing and dealing with Android means dealing with all of these different versions of Android that are all on these devices. And you can see that this fragmentation is inherent in Android itself, and it's just something that we're going to have to deal with for the time being, unless all of the phone companies, except for Samsung, disappear or something like that. You look. So this is a subway in San Francisco. Especially in San Francisco. I don't know about other cities. How many people have seen all these ads for Samsung Safe? Like, they spent $400 million advertising this, and these Samsung devices, you can do more with these Samsung Safe devices than you can do with an iOS device, and it's incredible. But do all of your Android users, do they all use Samsung? So it's really unfortunate, but it's what we have to deal with Android MDM today. And so that's MDM. We have all of these vendors that are providing sort of that back end, that third part, the management policies in the stack. Many of them have agent applications. And in iOS, while you interface with the APIs through the configuration profile, in Android you interface with the APIs through a freestanding application. But all of these companies and dozens more. And fortunately, some of these top mobile device management vendors are out there today, so you can talk to them about all this stuff. I'm so excited that all of these vendors are here, and also that so many people are here learning about mobility management. So the reality of mobile device management. I just spent 25 minutes talking about how from nothing we suddenly had all of these management APIs for the devices. And these management APIs, and these are great, aren't they? Like, because suddenly we have, hey, the APIs are there, so our mobility problem is solved, right? Right? I see nobody agreeing. Good. Maybe you've seen this presentation or a version of this, on the website from last year, because of course, just adding a few extra APIs, so that we can suddenly treat our iPhones the same way that we treated our old BlackBerries. Of course, that's not gonna solve our old problems. For users, when users brought in these devices, their management needs have changed. I have a very close personal relationship with my iPhone that I did not have with my BlackBerry. I don't know how many people feel that way. Quite a few, yeah. And also, since so many of these personal devices, there's this there's this feeling of, hands off my personal device, especially if it's something that I brought in, and suddenly you're going to take my iPhone and you're going to turn it into a BlackBerry. I don't think so. And from the IT perspective, while mobile device management has been advancing a lot, it's still not as easy as the BlackBerry days. Back when we had everybody had the same device. There was no question about what management server to buy because you bought BES. And every single new feature that came out on the device, had the controls come out in BES at exactly the same time. And then, of course, we have to deal with fragmentation, both in the fact that our users want to use, any one of several different operating systems and devices with all these different APIs. Users can jailbreak and root their devices, and if that happens, all bets could be off. There's some people that might jailbreak their devices just for convenience, and maybe we can try to deal with that. But there are also these users that are jailbreaking their devices for the specific purpose of screwing over their company. But then again, those types of challenges, with malicious intent, we've never been able to stop that, and we never will, despite what what security vendors will like to say. A user with malicious intent, they'll find a way. And finally, if we want to, we say that these user applications on the devices are, the source of the trouble or the source of leaking data. So okay, we'll blacklist the applications. Blacklisting, trying to figure out what applications to blacklist. Okay, they're 900,000 iOS apps and 900,000 Android apps or something like that. So which ones should I blacklist? Anybody? Anybody? Yeah, exactly. It's, who knows? So, there are places where that, old school, device level management, okay, we're going to take this and corporatize it, that might not work for us so much anymore. But on the other hand, there are places, now that we do have these management capabilities, with these new devices, it's brilliant. We can do all the, configuring all the account settings and the Wi-Fi and the VPN and everything. If we want to make these devices function more like, when a kiosk or it's a device that's shared among multiple users, that's something that we do want to lock down, great. If we're just worried about checking off compliance checkboxes, which that's a legitimate use, of MDM. We have to check this compliance box. We have device management policies. Hey, that's great. But where the real challenge the real challenge at the heart of the enterprise mobility management today, it's not bring your own device. It's not figuring out how do we or how can we turn an iPhone into a BlackBerry. It's how do we deal with the users. While bring your own device may have been the issue a few years ago, really the problem is, it's bring your own personal apps, data, and work styles. And like I said, we have to deal with this, pretty much no matter what, because people are going to want to do personal tasks on their work device, and they're going to do work tasks on their personal device. Take anybody with two phones, and if you can 100% maintain the distinction from one phone to another, then that's awesome. But I think I think a lot of people can't. But so we have this established that users, they're going to want to do both of these things on a single mobile device, because that's the way people work today. They work their 8 hours scattered somewhat throughout the 24-hour day, instead of all over the place, instead of in one 8-hour chunk in the office location. It's just the way that work is changing. But when there's work and personal shared on the same device, the problem is that these devices, we talk about their sandbox architecture, and that's great, but there are really many ways. The flip side is that these devices came through the social sharing revolution. So there's so many ways to share data, between different applications. As we all know, because we've been, come on, I'm not telling you anything new. We've been using iPhones for 6 years now. But while for users, sharing that data is absolutely great. Of course, for us, that's ways to leak data. And so take for example, this is my iPhone. Somebody emails me a top secret document. I have my work email, in the built-in email client. Somebody emails me the top secret document. I view the top secret document, and then I press that open in button. And hey, why not, just send that document up to Dropbox, where occasionally, once a month they have this like happy hour where passwords aren't required. So clearly, this is a problem, because as you'll see, traditionally, mobile device management has not been good at solving that sharing problem. This sharing, as of today, iOS 6 standard Android is really, really not good at solving that sharing problem. Let's take a look. So here's my phone. I have my personal applications. I have my work applications. They can all communicate to each other. They're all having like a happy party, cutting and pasting, sharing photos, sharing the contacts API. It's all a fun party in there. And I'm going to go and, I'll put a password on the device. I'll encrypt the entire device. I'll remote wipe the entire device. That's great. But all that party in there, that's still going on. There's no visibility into copying and pasting, the contacts, how the photos are shared, that open-in thing. But wait, see this asterisk? Remember how I told you that iOS 7 was going to change everything? One of the features that has been announced is something called managed open-in. Now the thing is, we don't exactly know how this works yet. Some of those guys, out of the Mobile Iron or Citrix or AirWatch tables, they probably know. They can probably hint about it, but they're not supposed to tell you because technically it still is under NDA. And thank Apple, I guess, for on the one hand they're being friendly by building these features into their products, but on the other hand, they're like, yeah, but you can't talk about them until they're actually released. So, it's what we deal with. But one of these new features that's talked about is managed open-in. So that problem, that slide a couple of slides ago where I took that top secret work document and put it into Dropbox, that could potentially be going away in iOS 7, and that's huge, because I just said that that's one of the biggest problems with MDM, right? And it goes away. We should be jumping up and down, happy, celebrating that problem could be going away. This is big. This is as big as 2010 was when this over-the-air iOS management came out in the first place. So if you're really an MDM nerd like me, it's really exciting. So I hope you're all exciting as well. So another issue with just using this device level management, we can use these MDM protocols. We can set up email, to deliver. We can use it to deliver email to our users. We can provision links to web applications. But just this MDM on its own, how are you going to get any other content? Obviously, email is a killer app for mobile, and we've been using that for a long time. But those 900,000 apps in the App Store, if all we needed was just mobile, then those 900,000 other apps wouldn't be there. And so if you're just thinking in terms of device level management, then you get that, and that's great, but you get no other content. So this device level the concept, it's just not going to work anymore for delivering content and for preventing that data leakage and such. We can try to make device level management work, but it's hard. I'll show you. So this is preventing that sharing with device level management. So I have, you go to the Apple Store, you pick up a brand new iPhone. It looks like this. Actually, this is a little picture. There should be another row of icons now. But you pick it up, and then, hey, we don't want all that sharing to happen. So we're going to use some MDM. We're going to, restrict the browser. We're going to restrict the user's ability to install other apps. And hey, that phone is probably a lot more secure than that phone. I don't know how many people want to use just this as their phone. So if that's your approach to dealing with that issue, because like that dangerous Dropbox app that we use to share that data out, we just said like, it's dangerous. Okay, forget it. I'm locking it down so much. So look, that Dropbox, it's not a problem anymore because you're not allowed to install it. But that happens, and you know what? I'm going to go out and I'm going to get another phone. So what we need to do, there are multiple parties that have horses in the race here, and we need to figure out how to make both of those sides both of those sides happy. We need to figure out how to deliver and manage the enterprise apps and data, and we need to do that without compromising the user experience. And without compromising the user experience, that goes both for like their personal apps, and also it goes for the enterprise data that we're delivering for them, and that's where it gets difficult. As we'll see in a little bit. The term that gets used a lot for this phenomenon is dual persona. This is how I use the term dual persona. Some people use it in more narrow concept, in more narrow contexts. But I use it as a general term to cover that dual tendency. So how do we keep that that corporate data accessible but successfully isolated without compromising the user experience? Well, we are at a desktop virtualization conference, aren't we? So how about this? This gets all of our work data. It's right there. It's separated from the personal device. It doesn't compromise the user experience for the personal stuff. But unfortunately, this does compromise the user experience for the work stuff. So maybe not. Now, I am being a little bit unfair because in more recent years, there are many great companies that are figuring out how to deliver Windows apps and Windows desktops to mobile devices by changing them around and doing all sorts of exciting things. So FrameHawk, they're out here. Take a look at their stuff. It's really cool. Citrix, the XenApp Mobility Pack. Jason Conger and Warren Simonson are going to be giving a session on the XenApp Mobility Pack that allows you to remake your applications in a much more touch-friendly way. But in general, for our core everyday email apps like email, where our device has a built-in app that's awesome, that might not cut it. What about HTML5? HTML5, hey, it works offline. I wrote this entire book in Google Docs. It was not without its frustration, to say the least. The spell check dictionary in Google Docs is creative. But like offline, that gives me offline. So does that work for our purpose of delivering our apps and providing that separation? Yes, maybe a better job in some circumstances. But when you're up against like a native application for something that the user is doing every single day, like email, that still might not cut it. And not to mention, like, HTML5 apps are great, but a lot of our old web apps, like while they work on mobile devices, who wants to go to brianmadden.com from their mobile device and try to log in with this? So there's app refactoring for mobile as well. This is some of you might have seen. I wrote an article a couple weeks ago about a company called Capriza that inline refactors web apps. So like that's the new version of the Brian Madden login page that I was able to make in like 5 minutes. And then the third way that people have tried to provide the separation is, heck, we're the virtualization industry. We can, let's virtualize the phone. And, it's really cool. Of course, there are a few difficulties with virtualizing the phone. One, it requires extensive customization and modifications. So it's not going to be every single device. Although this is VMware Horizon Mobile. They've been working on this for like 5 years, and it came out in May. And like, it's pretty cool that it's out there, but it's not all of our devices. It's not iOS devices. It's just a few. So to solve some of those problems, we come up on this concept of mobile app management. We need to get in there, and we need to get at the applications, so that this whole like sharing party that goes on when we just manage at the device level. We need to instead take our device. Let's maybe not worry so much about our user apps, and instead really just concentrate around our work applications, so we can make sure that the work applications only talk to each other, and the user applications only talk to each other, and not to the work applications. So that's our fundamental concept of mobile application management. And we can do the passwords, the VPN, the remote disable, the encryption. We can do that. All that stuff that we could do on the device level, we can do that on the app level as well. And in the meantime, we can also worry about app-to-app interaction, and and because we can have that visibility and prevent our corporate apps from talking to apps that we don't want to. But the problem is, last time you went to to one of these app stores, how many of those apps do you know of that had those capabilities? So where does mobile application management come from? Well, so these MDM vendors out here that I pointed out, many of them, they also do mobile application management as well. So, for the last year or so, all the talk has been around, how do we take normal applications and make manageable versions of them? The vendors, they provide their basic apps. I mean, like the Citrix Works apps, like they have the email app and that stuff. Or they can provide an SDK to build those mobile app management features into your in-house apps. Or this concept of app wrapping, where you take a pre-existing app and you modify it. Possibly questionable with the Apple's App Store distribution rules, but people are doing it. Or partnerships, like the Good, Mobile Iron, Citrix, several others are building up ecosystems of ISVs that are partnered with them to build applications that you can use their platform to do all of those individual mobile app management level things. Then, of course, there are also applications that, many SaaS apps that are freestanding on their own. Like at my company, we use Concur, the app comes from Concur. It plugs into our corporate Concur system. It works fine, and it doesn't need any extra management. So these mobile app management features, these are all platform agnostic, because they're relying on features that are built directly into the application itself. But I told you, iOS 7 was changing things, and like that managed open-in was an example of mobile app management being built into the platform. Samsung Knox, are you guys familiar with this? This is an extension of their third-party Android MDM APIs, because remember, as an Android device, they have to add in all the management themselves. So when they went to add in their management into Android, they went so far as they built everything that you need to do to be able to have all the controls you need to prevent, different apps from talking to each other that you don't want to, or having different security policies for different applications. So this iOS 7, so this is pretty exciting because we're getting these are features that they're hinted at. They're not confirmed yet, but what it seems like we're getting passwords, app level VPN. With a managed app feature, if you, I don't know what's happening here. This happened with the last presentation I get. So thank you, PowerPoint, for that. So iOS 7 is promising a lot of those things that we need, to do mobile application management. Now, there are a lot of questions still about it. One is many mobile app management vendors, one of their strong points is their third-party encryption is stronger than what's on the iPhone. So if you want to go beyond what's on the iPhone, then maybe you want the third party instead. Is iOS 7 going to have visibility into cut and paste? I don't think so. I haven't seen it be mentioned anywhere. What about, we had that open-in management control that I talked about. What about, controlling over what apps can access, the corporate contacts that are, part of the Exchange account. And the fact that we have these controls on the device is great, but remember, you still, for any other applications other than email and web apps, you still have to figure out a way to get that app out to your users. So just because the management features are there on the platform doesn't mean that that you have a free pass. And then there's these new features in iOS 7. They're going to be based, very very likely using that existing mobile device management protocol. So that protocol is growing in scope and it's growing much more flexible. But that means it's going to be on the enterprise mobility management vendors to provide their products that have flexible ways of deploying that protocol, including ways that will be good for users without users feeling like IT is going in and messing with their stuff. It also means that if you're using iOS 7 to get these features, that means that you have to establish that over-the-air connection and have that profile installed on the device. So if a device is used just every now and then, just on the weekends to check email, then maybe you still might want to go with a third-party mobile app management solution. And another thing is that iOS MDM protocol, as it exists now, you can only have one device hooked into just one management server. So, for a contractor, you can't hook that iPad into two separate management servers. So if you're relying on those servers if you're relying on the management server to provide your app management features, then you don't get multi-tenancy. So we have about 15 minutes left. So let me real quick some examples of some of the basics of mobile app management. And so Like right now, so email, like if you boil down all the hype from enterprise mobility management, like, well, hopefully from this session you take away why Android is difficult, why iOS 7 could be exciting. The third thing to take away from this session should be why email is a difficult, annoying problem on the devices. So we're going to talk about email, file syncing, and secure browsers. But email, why is email such a problem? We established that depending on your interpretation of compliance regulations, you might have to prevent those personal applications from accessing your corporate contacts. Depending on your situation. If you don't have to worry about that, then that's great, and you can pay attention less during this session. But if stuff like that matters in your situation, then you might have to worry about things like the personal applications accessing your corporate contacts. So if you use in iOS or Android mail.app, that built-in mail client, remember, if you're just using that built-in mail client, then your options are limited. You can kind of lock down the device so that the personal applications just aren't there on the device, or you can just deal with the fact that your users' personal applications are going to be able to interact with the corporate data in the mail client. And believe it, that can be perfectly fine, and maybe for the majority of people that is perfectly fine. Or you just have the user sign a policy, and that solves it, and that's great. But for those situations where we do want to figure out a way to provide that separation, then things get more difficult. So one thing that's common now, that most of the EMM vendors do this thing where they'll proxy the Exchange ActiveSync connection, and they'll encrypt the attachments and put them back in the email. So when it gets to the device, the encrypted attachment can only be decrypted with official corporate applications that have the key. So that way, your attachments, they're not going in Dropbox because they can, but they're encrypted, so who cares? But if you open it with the corporate application, then you can open it. So that's one way to do it. Again, to protect attachments with iOS 7, this managed open-in. So who knows exactly how it's going to work yet, but that's another option. And then our third option is to use that mobile application management stuff and just have a completely isolated third-party app. This is this is good technology. This is the Citrix mobile app. This is how many people know NitroDesk Touchdown or Enterproid? That's what all of these do. And the problem is there are some good third-party apps, and there are some third-party apps that don't have a good experience. And one of the problems with iOS traditionally for years has been that Apple does not approve third-party email apps to download content in the background. You can get the 256 byte push notification, but you're not going to get your message. So when you open up your third-party email app, you still have to wait for your messages to download. And full push email is where it's at. BlackBerry knew that 15. I'm sorry?
Just marketing. They try to sell their device to show that their application is better because you don't have to wait.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It completely keeps Apple. Here's a book for you. Pass that down, please. And but we've seen this gradual loosening of Apple's restrictions, making the 10 minutes, thank you, making the third-party apps have more capabilities. Because originally there were no third-party email clients, and then the first ActiveSync clients appeared near the end of 2009. But they couldn't download in the background. iOS 7, apparently, they will be able to download in the background. So that one big failure, one of the big failures of third-party email apps is goes away, because now, in theory, it will be possible to make apps that download in the background. Other apps that we care about for managing, and this is the big one. You have this device, you have your email, you have your apps, but like, hey, how do I get my documents, in a T drive on here? And maybe you email yourself, maybe you go and install Dropbox because it's free and it's easy, and then suddenly you have, all your documents on your iPhone, and it's great. Now, we might not like Dropbox because it's not secure, and that's okay, because there are dozens and dozens of versions of essentially secure Dropbox for the enterprise. And this gets really exciting because you have all your standard mobile app management capabilities on these apps. You have your authentication. You can have policies about how they're used offline. You can have super high encryption. You can specify how the applications are being shared from one document to another. You can, if you're afraid of somebody taking a screenshot of that doc that's on their device, you can just like watermark it with your username. Watchdocs does that. They use, they're out here. I actually use them to share some copies of the book with people, and it's pretty cool. And again, even some of these products, they're having document editing built into the file syncing product, so you don't even have to worry about breaking the document out of your secure app, to be able to actually work with it. And these are like the #1 things that, if you don't provide this, your users are going to Dropbox. These are, but again, so many options and so useful. And of course, modern file syncing is often associated with storing files in the cloud, but in reality, while they may be somewhat related, they are actually independent. So you can make the decision to enable modern file syncing completely separately from your decision of using the cloud. So many of these products just plug in to exactly what you have. And the great thing is, since there are so many options for these few basic apps to manage, the amount of effort is super easy. It's just a tiny amount of your effort, and then you can start worrying about how to manage some of your other applications. I'm going to skip ahead here because I didn't manage my time quite effectively as I could. To deployment scenarios. So, and what I skipped over was basically just, #1, there's this idea of when we have all of these managed mobile applications that I've been talking about, we want to be able to probably plug them into each other, and plugging all of your managed applications into each other. Like, one of the difficulties is that with third-party managed applications, they have to be specifically designed to talk to each other. So like your application from Mobile Iron that's managed with that might not be able to talk to your application that's managed using Citrix Works, the Zen Mobile mobile app management stuff, and that's a big pain. But since as I mentioned that iOS 7 is having that managed open-in capability, if we can provide that at a platform level, then we don't have to worry quite as much about our application, about how we're going to get our applications to be able to talk to each other. The other part that I skipped over was BYOD. I think in the beginning I covered enough that all these decisions about how you go about enabling your device, this is a separate conversation from BYOD. So I wanted to outline real quick. So a few quick things on you know, we just talked about all of this mobile device management. We talked about mobile app management. You know, hopefully this learning understanding how it works and what its limitations and what its abilities are is a good first step. But then it's like, okay, hey, so do I have to go out and do I have to go and buy all this, or what? You know, what am I going to do? So I like to think, you know, you have these variables of how you're going to handle email, how you're going to balance device-level management policies versus app-level management policies. How are you going to deal with, how permissive are you going to be with personal applications on a device? If it's a user's, you know, primary device that they use every day, I'd say you have to be very permissive and, you know, maybe work around the fact that your user could have absolutely anything on there. What corporate applications are you going to deploy to your devices? You know, are your corporate applications, are they going to talk to each other? And so what you get when you consider all those different variables, between mobile device management and mobile app management, there are a lot of different ways that you can combine this together. You know, just do MDM and lock it down, or just use MDM and use it lighter, or do mobile device management and mobile app management together using the different email techniques, or maybe just deploy apps alone and not worry about any of those management protocols. Yes?
Do you see people really doing just one step of this, or are they kind of offering it? Because, I mean, you've got the ecosystem now where you can really negotiate what an employee has access to based on how much control we want to take over their device.
Yeah, that's interesting. So one of the interesting parts about this is that like a year ago to a year and a half ago, these mobile device management and mobile app management vendors, they were, in many cases, they were different vendors with different competing philosophies about how to manage the device. So you got like people really butting heads about which way to approach it. But now that all of the serious enterprise mobility management vendors have a whole range of capabilities, you can see, you know, you can have your so many different nuanced ways of deployment. And one of these ways, you know, we talked about there are the different ways of deploying email, and all of them are kind of a compromise, because you might have to deal with the fact that users, you know, like if you want that serious security, you might have to lock down the device a little bit. Or if the user doesn't want their device locked down, then you're going to have to deploy a third-party email app, and then the user experience for that app isn't going to be good. And each one of those are a compromise. But if you're able to offer the choice to users, I say offer as many different choices. I mean, because we're in the era of, you know, consumerization, like the user is important, right? So I say, you know, you offer the choice for deployment scenarios. Maybe default to the one that impacts the user experience the least, but then be able to offer that wide range. Yes, a question here?
Jack, one is, in your view, building a parallel email app with a separate contact store, separate calendar store, and then, you know, not tying it to the built-in calendar contacts in the mail, is that the right consumerization strategy?
I don't know. It's really tough because, and you know, this is indeed the compromise that we have to make right now. Does it, you know, depending on the use habits, you know, are the contacts important to you, or are the contacts not important to you, and just the documents? Or is a policy good enough for all of it? It's definitely a compromise, no matter what. And iOS 7 changes how we have to make that compromise. So that's going to be big. We are out of time, and there's a question here and a question here. So I can do those now, but I guess you're free to leave because we're out of time.
It's actually for the group. It's really just a quick question.
Yeah.
And just a show of hands, how many people are actually using, excluding ActiveSync and Bez, MDM today?
Yeah, good question. How many people using MDM or anything up on this screen here today?
Because, I mean, you hear a lot from the vendors, you hear a lot about the industry that I'm just curious.
Yeah. And you know, your choice of whether or not you use it, like, or how you use it, that's all up to your individual situations. Hopefully I'm here to be able to know, to give more information about how it works. But thanks, sorry for going over time. Thank you everybody so much for coming.